Welcome to History in the First Person. The gentleman you're seeing on the screen right now, Ralph Goldsticker, is the same young man you just saw in that last image for our Open. He was a Bombardier in World War II. Hi everybody, I'm Tim Gore. I'm really happy to welcome you to the program. But Ralph, thanks very much for being with us today.
Happy to be here.
First of all, let's point out the fact that you fought during World War II. So you joined the military when and what year?
Actually enlisted July 6, 1942.
1942. And so at that point, how young were you?
I was 20.
20.
I applied for the Aviation Cadet Corps in March of 42 and took the tests in May and actually joined. I wanted to stay home for the 4th of July, so I joined July 6th, 1942.
Cool. So talk a little bit so the students have a sense of what was life like in the country at that point. Obviously, Pearl Harbor had happened just a few months earlier. Right. You lived in St. Louis. What can you tell them about what the feel of America was then?
Well, we're just getting revved up for war. I mean, we were peacetime up till December 7th, and people were joining, like the men of my age were lining up to enlist, and I knew I was going to get drafted eventually, and so I did enlist in the Aviation Cadet Corps.
And is there a particular reason why you chose to join aviation?
Well, I think advertising pays off. I found this, and as an enlisted man, you got $50 a month. But as aviation cadet, you receive $75 a month, and a chance to be an officer within probably 6 months. So I thought that'd be what I'd take.
Very cool. Let's give the students a little bit of a geography lesson as well. We can bring up a map of Europe in World War II, so in case you can't remember what Europe looks like, we'll let you have a chance to see it now. So you're able to see the European continent there. England, an allied nation, is in red. At that point in time, all you're seeing in that darker blue is the areas that Germany controlled at that point in time. By the time Mr. Goldsticker is going to join the effort, and that includes France. Let's go to some student questions right off the bat, because they want to know about why you joined the services you did and some other things about life then. So I'm going to go to Zach in Hillsborough, New Jersey. Zach, come on in. What's your question?
First, I want to say thank you for your service. And my question is, were your parents sad or proud of you entering the military, and how could you tell?
Thanks, Zach. Ralph, would you like to start?
I'm sure they were proud. They were not sad, maybe apprehensive, but it was one of those things that everybody was doing. I had all my friends, except one, were in the military eventually, and he had medical problems. But they weren't sad. I'm sure they were scared silly, as I would be as a parent, but I'm sure they're very, very proud of me.
So let's begin, Ralph, to talk about the nature of your job. We can bring up that image we first showed at the beginning of the program. You as the young man, and the man you're with here is your ground crew engineer? Who's the man that you're with in this picture?
He's the ground engineer, took care of the plane.
Are you in front of the plane that you flew in?
Yes, Deuces Wild, because it's 297-222. So we named it Deuces Wild.
Very cool. And at this point in time, is it fairly early in your career, or do you have any sense of?
I don't know. But that's about the way I'm dressed for most missions.
And then we've got a second picture that's you and your entire crew that we can bring up right now too. So we get a sense of the size of the crew for this B-17. First of all, let the students know, where are you in the image?
I'm on the far right side,
okay. Top right corner.
But from left to right in the back is my pilot, who was 22. The co-pilot was just 20. The navigator is 25, Hank. I'm there, I was 20. Hampton is down at the bottom. He was about 24. Fazone, he was 25. Fulmer was the ball turret. He was only 19. Watkins was 19, the top turret. And the other waist gunner, what's his name, Clayton, was also 19.
Lots of young men fighting a war.
We brought a plane from Georgia over to England with a 22-year-old pilot and a 20-year-old co-pilot, brand new plane about the size of a 739.
Well, let's look at some pictures of B-17s. Can you give us some sense of its dimensions? How big was the plane? How fast could it fly?
Well, our average airspeed was 150 miles an hour, but at altitude, most of our missions were 25 to 27,000 feet. So it'd probably be 225 over the target.
Okay.
But the indicated airspeed was just 150, because altitude, you go 3 degrees faster, but it was about 107, I think, feet long and maybe 135 feet wide. We had a crew of 10. As I said, the only one missing from the picture was the tail gunner. We had 10 guns aboard. I had 2. The top turret had 2. Each waist gunner had 1. The ball turret had 2. And the tail gunner had 2. 50 caliber. This is the 50 caliber ammunition we fired.
So that's what you were firing out of the guns that you had in the plane?
Yes.
Let's go back to that last image we saw of the plane so the students get an idea of where you were in it, and we can see where you flew. Let the students know, where is the Bombardier station at, Ralph?
As far in the nose you can get, right, the plexiglass nose. I sat there
right there in that plexiglass nose?
Right in the Norden bomb site there.
So so that's where you flew.
That's right.
So you certainly had a bird's eye view, so to speak, of everything that you were seeing as you guys.
It was good and it's bad because you could see, but you could also see the flak coming up that you're going to fly into down the bomb run. So that wasn't so great.
And then we also have a close-up image of what a Bombardier station looks like. How much space do you have in here? It looks like a pretty tight location in there, Ralph.
It is very tight, especially the way we're clothed.
We'll talk about that because you sent me a great email.
Yeah.
You're flying at high altitudes.
No pressure.
No
heat,
pressure at all.
25, 30 degrees below zero. And I'm dressed in 2 pair of socks, a pair of pants, a shirt, heated pants, another top, fleece jacket, leather helmet, army helmet on top of that, the oxygen mask, a cord to the heated suit, cord to the oxygen mask, cord to the mic. Then I had my parachute harness and the Mae West on top of that.
And the Mae West, in case the students don't know, refers to your life jacket.
Right.
And so, my gosh, you're kind of like wrapped up like a bear there, to say the least, and still able to operate the guns.
Well, I had 2 50 caliber guns and I had the control right there in front of me.
Okay.
But the hardest problem is going back to arm the bombs with all that equipment.
But I want to go to another student question, so I'm going to go back to Hillsborough, New Jersey. Jamie, let's go to your question.
First, thank you for your service. And my question is, could you please describe what you were thinking the first time you went into combat?
Well, I went as a replacement in our group. A week before, they'd had 14 planes shot down out of 24. So our crew went in as a replacement. So my first mission in combat, that was on my mind, what's going to happen, losing over half the planes. But our group flew 18 planes in the morning. I was not included. In the afternoon, 6 planes took off to drop bombs on a buzz bomb site on the coast of France. Churchill was worried about the buzz bombs coming into London. And so I was over enemy territory for maybe 5 minutes, and I figured this isn't so bad. But the next mission, second mission, I flew to Leipzig, deep into Germany, and we lost 3 planes out of our 18. So I'm starting to do the math. How long can this survive? When I went over, it was supposed to be 25 missions and you're through. But they did raise it to 30 and eventually 35, which I did.
Let's talk a bit more about now what happens with you guys on your missions when you do it. So let's talk about your entire crew, and then we can begin to see some footage of how it worked from a bombing formation perspective. So we can bring up a picture of the cockpit of a B-17. And you had 2 pilots, right? You had a pilot and a co-pilot both. And then there was a ball turret gunner as well,
right.
and we've got the ball turret location.
That's at the very bottom of the plane.
So that's underneath the middle of the plane, right? That's
yes.
hanging back down basically from the middle of the plane. So if you guys were coming in for a crash landing, he was in trouble.
Unless he could get out.
Unless he could get up and out.
I mean, it rotates automatically, and you could crank him out, but sometimes with the flak hit it just jams the thing.
And then you had a chin turret, which
was me.
That was you and the chin turret.
I had 2 guns, 50 calibers, right in the nose of the plane.
Okay, so that's the chin turret guns you see right there under the nose of the plane where the Bombardier station is. And then there was also a waist and tail gunner perspective?
A waist gunner on each side with each one gun.
Okay.
And the tail gunner had 2 guns in back.
And you had mentioned that you flew in formation, and we got a couple of images of B-17s in formation, so there could be a number of you that could go in formation. You guys may wonder about how all this occurred. We've got some newsreel footage that we're going to share with you throughout the program. This piece of footage is going to give you an idea about the importance of targeting procedures, why they mattered so much to the war effort at that point in time, and then we'll have a chance to talk to Ralph specifically as we look at some other footage about what they did as a mission would occur. Ralph, you had a comment, a thought?
Well, the mission of the 8th Air Force was to try to knock out the German ability to fight the war. And our main targets were oil refineries, number 1, ball bearing factories, aircraft factories and transportation, railroad yards.
Okay.
So those were our main targets. We did help the ground force, of course, on D-Day, and after that, St. Lo. But our main mission was to destroy the German infrastructure.
You want to destroy their infrastructure. They can't create more military weapons. They can't do more damage to us.
Almost 3 miles below this formation of American flying fortresses, there lies Marienburg in East Prussia. Up to this moment, one of the most important cogs in Germany's war machine. The specific target on which this lead bombardier is lining up his bomb site is the Focke-Wulf 190 plant. Up to this instant, this aircraft factory has been accounting for almost 50% of Germany's total FW-190 fighter assembly.
Bombs away.
Tons of bombs rain down in a tight pattern of destruction. This, remember, is no area attack. It is an assault on one single target, and any bomb that falls outside that target has failed to achieve its purpose. The assembly of fighters in this Focke-Wulf factory has come to a sudden and violent end. To many, the bombing of Germany probably seems to be little more than a series of capricious adventures. One attack unconnected in any way with the one that preceded it or the one that will follow it. It is easy for the average citizen to envision the positions of ground armies because of maps like these, which make the positions of the contesting forces quite clear. It is harder to express so graphically the progress of a bombing program. Yet there is a real line in this battle of Germany, not a geographical front, but an industrial one.
An industrial front is what we end up with the narrator saying right there, and that just goes to reinforce what you were talking about before. You really want to put down their industrial capacity.
I think 6 of my 35 missions were oil refineries.
Oh, wow.
I bombed Schweinfurt, which was ball bearing, Regensburg, which was aircraft plant, and a tank factory in Berlin, I know, and many marshalling yards, railroad yards.
Well, let's take the time to break down what we saw in an overview picture there with all those missions. We've got some footage of getting in the plane, taking off, and then flying to the destination, what you had to do with that. So as we go to this footage here, getting in and taking off in the plane, there's all 10 of you obviously getting into the plane, but they're going in through the middle of the plane where most people would, and you told me an interesting story before the program began, Ralph. How did you guys do it differently?
We went in through the escape hatch, which is right under the pilot's cockpit. I don't know why, loaded the way we were, but that's what we did. We just pulled ourselves up and in we went.
Interesting. So when the bombing raid was called for, you knew you were about to go. How fast did it take you guys to get in the plane and get going?
Well, we'd wake up, they'd wake us at 2 or 3 in the morning. We'd have breakfast, then we'd have briefing, general briefing, then the Bombardiers would have separate briefing with the targets. And then we'd go out their planes to check our guns. So from the time at 2 or 3 in the morning till we took off, it was probably 7 in the morning when we took off.
Okay.
And that was the scariest part of all, with 1,000 planes or more taking off in a small area, maybe 100 square mile, 100 by 100. There were many crashes and going through the clouds. I mean, once
crashing
you broke
into each other, you're saying, in
once you
formation.
broke out of the clouds, you felt much safer.
Oh, wow.
But that was the scariest part of all, was the taking off.
Well, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. Thank you, Ralph. Let's go and now we're going to go back in the plane. Now we're going to go to the target destination and how you defend yourself. We got some narration that goes with this, and then we can talk about it after we see it.
From 10:30 on, the Anklin formation has to contend with constant German fighter attack from all levels and all clock positions. During this time, the gunners aboard the fortresses knock down fighter after fighter. However, the gunnery of the forts, no matter how sensational it may be, is only to ensure the successful performance of the mission. It is not the job or purpose of forts or liberators to seek out action with enemy fighters. They merely defend themselves against enemy fighter attack so that they can destroy their target and bring their crews back safely to their home bases.
Outside the target, we were hit quite often by fighters.
Very cool.
They would break up the Air Force. Maybe 1,000 planes would take off to go into Europe, but then they'd split into 3 different targets, so trying to confuse the German Air Force
As to
where
which
to
one
go.
you were going, where you're actually going to.
So.
Well, let's go to some video of actually targeting and dropping the bomb, because this is what you had the chance to do.
An anxious moment comes now for the lead navigator and bombardier. The formation is approaching the initial point. That is the point where the wing will turn off and make its bombing run on the target. Upon proper navigation to this point may rest the success of the entire mission.
Pilot to left waist gunner. We're over the IP. Release fires. Waist gunner to pilot. Roger. Pilot to bombardier. Your ship. Bombardier to pilot. Roger.
The bomb bay doors open. The group is committed to its attack.
Bombs away. Bombs away.
Now, they're all targeting the exact same location, or are you slightly different in the sense that you're doing an industrial complex, so some ways doing a certain building?
It depends. I mean, a lot of these industrial targets are acres big, so we're aiming for different buildings, but we all have a specific target. That. And one thing that down the bomb run didn't mention, we're so close that they're calling a clear above, clear below the ball turret and the top engineer to make sure no one's dropping bombs on us or we're dropping bombs on anyone else. No, but we're dropping 6, the whole squadron at one time. We drop on the lead bombardier to cover the entire target. Because the Norden bomb site, as good as it was, we're dropping from 25 to 27,000 feet and maybe half a mile before the target. So it's not accurate like they are today, where they can sit in a desk someplace 3,000 miles away and hit a car. We're hitting an industrial complex, and it was great, but could have been better.
Well, obviously, you can only deal with the technology you have at the time. Right. Let's go to Tucker in Dexter, Kansas. Tucker, come on in and ask your question.
Was there something you did for good luck?
Did you have a good luck charm or anything like that, Ralph?
The only thing I did different, I'm Jewish, and I was confirmed when I was 16, but not religious. But the co-pilot was Jewish, I was Jewish, and maybe 20 others on the base were. So every Friday night we got together and had our own services. As I said, there's no atheist in a foxhole. I agree. I started praying, which I had never done before. But I think that's the only thing. I had no other extra special charm. But
let's go back to Dexter. Keisha, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Correct me if I'm not. Let's go to your question.
Well, Keisha's not here today, so I'll ask her a question. She says, how did you keep in touch with family back home?
Ralph, probably a little bit different in terms of time period. Did you have mail that would come to you?
I wrote maybe every other day, and also V-mail, which was, I don't know how it went, but it was a small thing. Maybe it went by radio or something and it went faster, but I wrote most every other day, and especially after every mission, I wrote, finished mission number 7, or whatever it is. My mother did save all those letters. I still have them.
Oh, how wonderful is that?
That's they weren't so great, but they're there.
Well, but it's the record of the time. That's marvelous.
One thing, letters I had to write, please send me cookies or food. You had to take it to the post office and show them that to the post office that I requested it. Otherwise, you couldn't just send things to overseas.
Oh. Yes, who knows what might be coming to you.
Yeah, so you had a request.
Very cool. Let's go to Lorain, Ohio. Miranda, let's go to your question.
Thank you both so much for your service to this country. And could you describe your motivations and what it took day to day to serve in times of war and ultimately return home?
I had the motivation, stay alive. I had the opposite result. I figured I was going to die every time I go out. They're shooting at enemy 800 to 1,600 guns over the target, and I fear that's the end. But staying alive was my main motivation, so I wanted to hit the target and get back home.
Well, thankfully, you
Yes,
did.
I
just
did.
that.
I was lucky.
We're very glad. We got a question that came from Carol, one of our students who's joining us from Puerto Rico. Did you guys, either one of you, have signals or code that you used to communicate? Like when you guys were in the plane, was it all on microphone and talked, or were there hand signals too? And
It's 100% microphone. Everyone, I mean, picking up a fighter, the tail gunner pick up the bandit at 6 o'clock, and we'd follow him around, and I'd pick him up at 12 o'clock, or down the bomb run, whatever it would be, clear high above and high below. So, and when the pilot turned the plane over to me, I mean, he'd tell me, 100% microphone.
you've had the chance to mention it, Ralph, but we wanted to emphasize the fact that part of your mission time was during D-Day.
Right.
So we want to bring up an image which you sent to us, which gives the mission list. I've got this on my computer as well, but we can bring it up here so that everybody can see that the missions that you flew, and you flew a total of 35 missions, 25 were with the same crew, is that correct?
Correct.
And as we can see when we switch to my laptop here, you can see that you flew a couple of missions, it looks like, on June 6th. Am I pronouncing these right?
Yeah.
And Argentan, or how would my French is not all that good.
Actually bombed the big coastal guns right before the British troops on the coast between Caen and the beaches.
All right,
so
and we can bring up some maps that can show you that. We can either go straight to my computer or go to the maps that demonstrate that, and you can see all of these locations where the Germans were. And here, right here, is Argentan.
We bombed that in the afternoon to keep the Germans from bringing troops up.
Okay, so you had a very specific mission. You didn't want them to be able to reinforce the troops that had been on the beachhead, and so you were bombing that location to
I
prevent
was in there 14 and a half hours. In the morning, we had to fly up to Scotland to get in bomber stream, because there was about 2,000 bombers coming straight down toward the coast. It took that long to go up and come back to get in bomber stream. So we took off at 2 o'clock, and I bombed at 6:58 in the morning, right before the British troops on these gun emplacements. And we landed about 9 o'clock. Then we had lunch, and they refueled the plane, and put more bombs in, and we took off about 3 and bombed Argentina, and then got back about 9:30. So I was in there about 14 hours that day.
So that, wow, 14 hours of flying and that kind of intense flying. So that mission you're doing in the morning, we can bring up my laptop again so we can see the map and naval bombardment locations. That's the one that you flew into Caen, around that area?
Yeah, right at the beach.
And the purpose of that was to help the landing?
Yeah, to knock out the gun emplacements, because
So,
they had heavy guns there.
Talk a little bit about the build up to that moment. Did you guys have a sense a week before, 2 weeks before, we're getting close, getting close?
A couple of days before, they locked the base down. No one could come in, no one out, no mail, no anything. And actually on June 5th, about 10 in the morning, we started the briefing then, and we knew that was the time we're going on.
Wow. Now your plane actually got hit as well.
Not that day.
Not that day, but later on July 31st.
31st, we took a real beating.
And we've got some student questions that want to ask you about that, so I'll go to those student questions now. I'm going to go, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Rosalise, back in Lorain, Ohio. Why don't you ask your question?
First, thank you both for your service, and this is for Mr. Goldsticker. Can you describe your emotions when your plane was hit on July 31st, 1944, and also describe your emotions after your crew was split up and working with the new crews for the remainder of your time overseas?
And we also had a question that came to us from Ryan in South Mountain, New Jersey, about the difficulty of flying the plane after it had been hit, after all those 70 holes had been put in it. Give the students a sense of what that experience was like.
Well, we were flying over Munich on July 31st, 1944, was my 25th mission. And about 10 seconds after I released the bombs, a burst of flak hit right under the plane. I don't know, it was 1 or 4, and their batteries are anti-aircraft, or groups of 4. But I heard a big thump, and the first thing I did was shot down. I grabbed my parachute. I just had my parachute harness and my parachute by the side, so I was going to put it on. But there's a piece of flak in there, so it wasn't going to do me any good. And we weren't under fighter attack, and then they said Marty was hit. He's the co-pilot. So I was a medical officer on the crew, so I went up and gave him a shot of morphine and sprinkled sulfa on his wound. He had a hole in his leg about the size of a softball right through the top of his thigh. Knocked out 2 engines, and we were leaving the formation. So I stayed with him until we were out of the flak, and then I went back to man-mine guns because we were being attacked by fighters because we're all by ourselves. A formation going on with 2 engines you couldn't keep up. So we were under attack when P-51s came along and drove the fighters off. Fortunately, they made one pass and that was it. So we're on our own. We tried to go into Switzerland because of his wound, and it was fogged down the ground, so we're going to have to go back to England. So as soon as we were out of the fighter attack, fortunately at 25 degrees below zero, the blood was freezing as soon as it came out, so it stopped the blood flow. So I stayed at my guns until we were lower down and started bleeding. Then I went up. For the last 3 hours, I held a pressure point on for my Boy Scout training on his leg because you could put a tourniquet on. And we threw out everything in the plane that we could to lighten the load so we could get home. So
did he survive?
He survived. He was in the hospital 4 years, had 22 operations, and he survived about 80.
Wow.
The worst thing that, I won't say worst, funny to me, but unfortunate, he went to the VA maybe 10 years later and asked for a special pair of shoes, and the clerk said, "Why do you need them?" He said, "I was shot while I was flying over Germany." He said, "What were you doing there?" So,
oh my goodness.
So I hope you kids do better than that.
Wow. Thanks very much for that question.
Oh, she asked also how I felt about flying after that.
Uh-huh.
Well, I had flown 25 missions in 2 months. In fact, I'd flown 11 after we got back from Russia. That's a different story. On the 21st of June, we went to Russia, and our plane was destroyed on the ground in Russia. But after we started flying on the 14th of July up to the 31st July, I flew 11 missions in, I think, 17 days. After that, it took me 2 months to fly my next 10 as replacement. But I felt comfortable because they're all trained well, and we all had our jobs to do. And I flew 7 as a Bombardier, and I did fly 3 as navigator as a replacement in the crew. When the crew members get sick or injured or something, so I replacement them.
When did you return from the war? When did your service end?
I got out actually October 20th, 1945.
Okay.
I got it real quick because my overseas service, my medals, and actually I came back St. Louis on about the 12th of September, I think, I was here. After I finished my missions, I stayed overseas as group awards officer for 4 or 5 months. We didn't know what happened to us when we came home. They were training people for fly B-29s over Japan. And after I'd been shot at for 40, 25, 35, 40 times, I had enough flak. And I was flak happy like we all were. So I stayed over there for the 4 months, came home in March of 45. Then I went to Bombardier school, Bombardier instructor school. I was teaching French cadets when the war ended.
And let's go to Caden in Dexter, Kansas. Caden, what's your question?
Did you receive any medals or citations?
And I'll hold this, Ralph, so people can see it well, but you had the opportunity to bring medals and citations. I see a Distinguished Flying Cross here. I see a Victory Medal. Could you talk a little bit about these?
Well, this is the Victory Medal. This is the Distinguished Flying Cross. I was promoted to captain during the Korean War. I was in the reserves. The Air Medal I received 5 times, and this is a medal from the Russian government for service in Russia when I was over there. And I also have a plaque from the French government for my service during World War II.
And you and I had a chance to talk a little bit before the program about the importance of history and learning from older folks.
Well, one thing that I wish I had done over the years is ask questions of my parents, my grandparents, even my great-grandparents. Like, I don't know how my parents met. I wish I knew. I just hope all of you ask questions of your parents and grandparents, not genealogy, but just everyday actions, what went on. Like my grandson asked my mother one time, what was the most important thing in your life? I thought, she was born in 1895. I thought maybe the telephone, something like that. She said the refrigerator. It stopped bringing the ice into the house. That's the kind of things that I'm asked, and so you know what went on in our generation.
I won't disagree with that. I like the refrigerator. I'm a big fan of the air conditioner as an invention too, especially with St. Louis summers. Ralph Goldsticker, thank you very much for your service, and thank you so much for sharing your stories today. We're really grateful that you guys were able to join us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being a part of History in the First Person.